Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on January 16th. This is the third video that I'm doing today about the different pathogens. The first two videos were on my conversation with Miss Taiwan, and the second one was the update on the Marburg outbreak in Tanzania. So please watch those episodes. I think it's episode 78, 79. In this video, we're going to go over the news on hMPV and influenza, especially the highly pathogenic H5N1. Now, what I'd like to do is just to remind you, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please help support my work by donating. You can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Click the link in the description of this video. I'll take you to the website, and if you'd like to donate, you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on the homepage at the very bottom. It's a great way to help support my work. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's through the donations, and the ones that have been a paid member on my Patreon channel, that allows me to do these videos for free. I have thousands of videos describing to you what's going on in the news and what you need to do. All right, I go into detail what exactly you need to do. If you follow my lead, you will be fine. If you don't follow my lead, I can't help you. All right, so and I give you lots of information about what's going on in economics and what's going on in geopolitics and how they all dovetail to each other. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to do a cursory view of the human hMPV and influenza. Again, please make sure you ask your followers, your social media, to follow me on all my channels, the 4 channels I have on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description of this video. Please subscribe to all of the channels. It's really important. I also do live streamings. You can watch the live streamings on YouTube and on Rumble. You can also watch the live streams on my website under Broadcast Live. In addition, you can listen to my podcasts. You can listen to the podcasts on Apple Podcast, Podomatic, and on my website under Broadcast Radio. Great way to keep abreast on the information that I'm providing. The podcasts that I just mentioned are audio. So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the different products that I offer to help support my work and to help support yourself. All right, so in this video, I'm going to be going over what's been in the news about influenza and hMPV. I'm going to do another video about the virology on Marburg. Okay, so this is one day ago from France 24.
Looking to get absolutely jacked?
No, just looking for clean protein.
Clean? You need to take your muscles to the map!
This is hMPV virus speculations infect social media. So I haven't seen this video, so it'd be interesting to know how France 24 demonizes people covering it.
It's time for truth or fake. Carolina Marchand Abru is here in studio. Carolina, in today's edition, the hMPV virus outbreak in northern China. Some users are claiming that a new lockdown is upon us. Tell us more about what they're saying.
That's right, Sharon. A surge in cases of the flu-like human pneumovirus, also known as hMPV in China, has raised fears of another COVID-style pandemic. According to this Chinese CDC statement, actually since last December, cases of hMPV amongst people under 14 years old, especially in northern China provinces, were trending upwards. The talk of this
Now,
virus is shaking.
normally what happens is hMPV hits the pediatric patients, primarily 1 year of age or less, maybe 2 years of age or less, geriatric patients 65 and plus, but primarily pediatrics. Okay. We'll find the video, but my understanding is the current outbreak that's happening in India, a geriatric patient has been announced. Most of the cases in India have been pediatric patients of just a few months old.
Social networks with talks of states of emergency, lockdowns, mortality rates. Let's take a look at some of these alarmist claims going around, starting with the local situation in China, where this post from January 7th, this user says, schools in China close as hMPV infections surge, where we see in the photo added the similar scenes from the ones we lived throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, while users also claim that a state of emergency has been declared in China as the epidemic overwhelms hospitals and crematoriums with a mix of multiple viruses spreading rapidly across the country. Then other users also say that the mortality rate of this virus reached a staggering 43%. As this user says, pandemic 2.0 has begun, as it seems we found at least more than 50 accounts on TikTok that have been posting a more alarmist content. For instance, this one, a warning of an alleged lockdown that will take place here in France following announcements from President Emmanuel Macron. Content also vaguely citing official sources in China and Europe without naming them explicitly, as the same claims have also been made in English in TikTok following the threat of the spread of this, what they call a new virus.
Take us through some of the details then, Catalina. Have you been able to debunk these claims?
Well, let's begin with this image of emergency workers. We conducted a reverse image search and we found that this photo was actually taken by AFP journalists. It was taken in 2022 in Beijing during the actual COVID-19 pandemic. So already a photo that has been miscaptioned on social media to alarm users about the current situation in China, where no state of emergency has been declared so far. The World Health Organization issued a press release on January 7th saying that Chinese authorities report that their healthcare system.
My take on this, because I've been covering it from the onset, my take on this is that China is not being truthful on the numbers that are happening, and that the information that is leaking out of China is that the cases are much higher and that many hospitals have these hMPV cases. In addition, China also said that their cases were starting to go down. And like I said, most of the time, in most years, the peak is in March to May, not December to February. So what's going on? Does that mean that another surge is coming? And you got India that's really worried, all right? So you don't have, she's talking about France users and all this stuff, but you have a lot of people that are concerned in India about this. Now, why is the Western media trying to downplay it? Now, mainstream media. Is it because of economics? Is it because they don't want to have supply chain disruptions? Because they already have bouts of inflation and that another pandemic or another worry will be another series of inflationary pressures? Is it more about finance and why they're doing it? I think that there is a problem going on in China. Now, do I think that it's going to be widespread and it's going to be like COVID? No. No. But we need to understand how hMPV is evolving. Is things happening on the G and the H the G and the F protein for MPV, where it's mutated and it's becoming more, it can fuse better, or is it just garden variety? Now, H1B and B1 and B2 seem to be clades to worry about.
Is not overwhelmed per these claims that we just saw that there has been no emergency declarations or responses triggered by the surge of this virus. There has also been no official statement from French President Emmanuel Macron or other world leaders declaring an upcoming lockdown due to the spread of this virus. And we actually found that a large portion of the TikTok videos and content like this one come from, for example, parody accounts on TikTok. For example, this one called P News that describes itself even as the source of disinformation on their caption with extremely viral videos like the one we just saw. Here's another example of another lockdown, fake lockdown video of hMPV virus, as social media has been feeling these fears of a new pandemic with the surge of this virus in northern China.
Finally then, Catalina, tell us a little bit more about the virus itself, mortality rates, how it spreads, how to prevent it from spreading.
We'll begin by debunking these claims about the virus that reaches
now, according to Miss Taiwan, what she's seeing in the news in China and in Taiwan is that there are people that are getting sick and that certain types of medication like Paxlovid are in short supply, and they're trying to get the Indian knockoff version of it. Now, what's really happening? I don't know. China hasn't been truthful. China still hasn't been truthful about COVID, in terms of numbers. They've lied about their number of the cases. So now what is interesting is that she's going to that ND, I think it's called In China Focus. Is it In China Focus or is it NTD? It might be NTD that she's referencing. It's one of the videos. Yeah, it's NTD. I played that video on one of my shows. I view NTD as like CIA operation type stuff in China, in China Focus or Focus in China or whatever it's called. Also CIA type disinformation, psyop type crap. I don't really pay attention to NTD. I don't trust it. All right. It seems as though NTD was kind of split off of Epoch News. I don't really trust Epoch News that much either. But the thing is that you need to listen and get all the data points to understand what is really going on. Now, my take on this is that something is happening in China. How bad is it? We don't know. There's a lot more unknown than known. My concern, like I said, is peaks don't normally happen until March through May in China for hMPV. If there's really a problem and it's happening in December, January, and February, that is a canary in the coal mine that's stating that there is a higher probability of more cases in the Asian theater in March, April, May. Now, it's not just China. Cases have increased in Malaysia. Cases have increased in India. So what's going on? Cases are higher in Malaysia compared to last year. What's going on? So it's about severity. It's about what has mutated for the MPV. What's the real caseload? You can have high caseload, but severity is low, or low caseload and severity is high, or high caseload and severity is high. Now, so France 24 is going after NTD here in this round.
mortality rate. We found this figure in a study published in 2013. And while this study does reveal that this mortality rates of this virus at 100 days were 43%, this rate only concerns a specific population. This would be patients, for example, with leukemia. So there might be, as usual, a high mortality rate for very high-risk groups like these, but this mortality rate does not apply to the general population, according to experts that we've interviewed. The hMPV virus is also nothing new, contrary to lots of claims that we've been seeing online. It was actually discovered back in 2001, so it's been around humans for at least several decades, giving us time to create these antibodies against the virus, a respiratory virus known to cause symptoms similar to colds and to flu, such as fever, runny nose, coughing, and
So France 24 is saying, okay, we're going to have, because we've been exposed to hMPV, it's been relatively common in the modern era, discovered in 2001, avian version was discovered in the 1970s, so there seems to have been some split between the two. Mathematical modeling suggests that the split was between hMPV and avian MPV at about 130 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, but probably around 130 years ago. Well, if it was split off 130 years ago, why did it take so long to actually be able to isolate and focus on it in 2001? Now, I know for a fact that in 2001, a whole lot of bioweapon development was taking place in different labs around the world. I know that for a fact. Now, it wasn't just in 2001 where it just starts the weapons programs. Weapons programs were going all the way back into the 1960s on different things. But the point I'm making here is that something common that seemed to have been isolated in 2001 and studied, that's the human version of MPV, has been circulating around the world. It has manifestations of what we would call the common cold, and people typically get it in their pediatric or in their geriatric years because their immune system isn't as robust. And there's cross-reactivity because you've built up antibodies. Now, people that are healthy may have been asymptomatic or may have had something minor and really had MPV and they never tested. It's probably under-tested. MPV is probably an under-tested situation because if you go into clinic and you look like you have the common cold, they're not doing PCR tests or lavage testing or saliva testing or anything like that. All right. So probably a lot of cases are underreported because it's such a benign thing. The question is there something really happening in China? I've been asking this question since I've been covering MPV. We don't know because there seems to be a lack of transparency in China. Now, there's 100% sure that India is worried. Now, why is India worried? So they're just basically saying, it's benign, don't worry about it. Well, there was an awful lot of people saying, don't worry about a lot of things, and it becomes a problem. Now, is it a problem? I don't think it is, but I need to have the sequences of the cases that are happening in India, the cases that are happening in Malaysia, the cases that are happening in China, what's really happening. They're not being transparent. Why? Why is it that Taiwan is saying that there's problems that are going on in China? Is this just kind of a military psyop thing that's going on between China and Taiwan? Possibly. But the thing is that what is going on? Is hMPV a real problem? Now, hMPV cases do happen in the United States, but there hasn't been any real severity to it. So is there something emerging in China that is potentially a problem. I do know this. Respiratory pathogens can become extremely problematic, either through natural mutations or mutations that have been done in a laboratory. Respiratory is a big problem when it comes to pathogens. You need to put your antennas up if you start hearing respiratory. You need to put your antennas up a little bit when it's hemorrhagic. It sounds scary, Ebola and Marburg, but probably you're not going to be exposed. And you need to put your antennas up a little bit more and be vigilant when it comes to mpox. But when it comes to respiratory, you need to pay attention, because if something bad happens, let's say, this is what I've been saying on multiple videos. Let's say you take something benign like hMPV that's spreading. All right, let's just say it's benign. You have a weakened immune system now. Remember what I said before. You get sick and it's benign. Guess what? It takes 3 weeks to remodel your tissues. A benign, mild cold, 3 weeks. 3 weeks to heal. You feel better after 7 days. It takes 3 weeks to heal the tissues. You start having bronchitis or pneumonia, a worser version of it, and it's going to take an additional series of weeks, probably additional 4 or 5 weeks on top of the 3 to fully remodel, depending on how severe the pneumonia was or the bronchitis or how chronic it is. So you have a large part of the population that gets something benign, and the mainstream media says, oh, it's benign, don't worry about it. And then you get a little bit of that on the edge of bronchitis pneumonia that I was talking about in a previous video. And guess what? You got circulating H5N1 that's easier to get into your system because you have a weakened immune system, because your body is recovering from a benign respiratory infection that happened to get bronchitis or happened to become pneumonia for you. Now, I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of people out there during the cold season that are going to have this bronchitis pneumonia edge. And if you have chronic bronchitis, you got a problem. So you get something benign, like let's say whatever circulating in China gets into the United States, and you're going through that remodeling of a prior infection, it's going to be harder to fight this. So let's just say you got influenza A in this case, all right, benign. You're not feeling so well, but it's going to take, a few weeks to remodel. Then your body, as it's remodeling, gets hit by a benign version of hMPV. And all of a sudden, now you got this chronic bronchitis, or a lingering cold, all right? And then you go into the summer months and you're feeling a little bit better, but you're still not 100%. Your immune system is still a little bit down. And you get hit by H5N1. And there's not that many mutations with the one you get, so it just kind of gets in there and just, festers a little bit. You're not feeling well, but then you heal. It takes several other weeks to fully recover from that. So it's this compound effect that I'm talking about. And if you get a series of people in your area that have this problem, a weakened immune system, compromised pulmonary because of prior infections throughout the cold season, you're a cesspool for mutations for H5N1. And it's going to be circulating amongst wildlife and humans during the summer of 2025. So the problem with mainstream media, even if this is benign, which I don't think it is in China, but let's just say it is, because of the domino effect, this dovetails right into mutations for H5N1. And this is the reason why mainstream media fucks it up all the time. This is the reason why most experts in the medical field get it wrong. Right here. because they're silo thinking. You got to look at this in a system-based approach. Because if you don't look at this in a system-based approach, you're gonna have problems.
Spreads faster during these winter months. Margaret Harris from the World Health Organization assures us that there's currently no abnormal increase in this virus, not considered to be a health threat that would require exceptional measures such as a lockdown per the fake claims. For now, there's actually no vaccine against this virus. Experts advise simple preventative measures such as masks or sneezing into your elbow, washing your hands, measures that we learned throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, as health officials in China have declared on a Sunday that the rate of the hMPV infections in northern China has decreased or declining amid this concern over a potential new pandemic.
Catalina,
Now
thanks for taking us through all of
that part, okay. The rate of hMPV infections in northern China is declining, Chinese officials say. Now, if it wasn't a problem, why are they even making that statement? Now, it is true. It is true. Typical seasons in China, there is a surge especially in pediatric patients. There's a surge in December, January, and February. It dies down and it resurges with more cases relative to the prior surge, with more cases in March, May, in March, April, and May. Okay, so it's bimodal. All right, there's a surge and then a larger surge. All right, and the worry I have is what happens in March, April, and May in China. That's the worry I have. Is it going to be normal or is it not? Now, if it's not a problem in China, why are they even making this statement? Because if it's not a problem in China, why do you have to make the statement that in northern China it's in decline? It's declining. You know, and I had another video that was talking about Beijing is a major problem with the cases. All right, please refer to that video that I'm talking about MPV updates. I think it's like episode 60 or episode 76, 75, somewhere. All right, so the point this is Associated Press. The rate of hMPV, and this is just recent because I mentioned this, that last week they were saying cases are declining. Now, according to Miss Taiwan, in the news in Asia, that's not the case. They're saying the cases are still elevated. Now, that may be the aggregate in China. While this is very specific, northern China is declining. Notice the way it's said. The rate of hMPV infections, the rate of change, right? The rate of it in northern China is declining. Well, what about southern China? What about eastern China? What about western China? Chinese health officials say. Well, if it wasn't a problem, why even make this statement? Because according to France 24, they're making it seem as though there's no problem. I'm telling you, there's a problem in China. Now, what the hell is it?
Increase are declining amid this concern over a potential new pandemic.
Catalina, thanks for taking us through all of that. That's Catalina there with this evening's Truth or Fake. Well, that's it from us for now. Do stay with us.
All right, so, you know, I personally think that China's hiding something. Because if it was just the normal caseload, why is this even in the news? Well, then people would say, well, we're just trying to, you know, the mainstream media may say social media is just fueling flames on something that doesn't really exist. But if it doesn't really exist, why does China have to say the cases are declining? And cases would be declining at this moment in time. That's typically the normal pattern. But it's not typical to hear cases that they're running out of peroxalovir. She didn't say anything about that. Are they running out of peroxalovir? Do they have more respiratory problems? than normal? Who knows? But India is really worried. Why? Why? So now what we're going to do is now this guy is from SABC in South Africa, and he's going to explain why hMPV is not to worry. Now, I personally think you need to worry because there's a lot more unknown than known. Now, this was done 3 days ago. And this is for 13 minutes. I don't know if I want to do 13 minutes. No, I don't want to do that long of a version of it. I already gave you a synopsis of what they're going to say. They're basically going to say something like, it's benign, lots of people get it, people have antibodies, there's cross-reactivity, don't worry about it. The question is, has something mutated in China where it's a problem? Now, something probably has mutated. It's probably a problem in China. It's going to become a problem in local areas like India and Malaysia, and it's going to die down. That's what I think is going to happen. All right. But if something changed with the G or the F protein, where there's better fusion, better attachment to the heparan sulfate receptor, we got a problem. I want that answer. Because if we do have that, then America has a problem. So just answer that question. You know, professionals in the mainstream media, is the G protein and the F protein mutated in such a way where you have better fusion into the cell? And or do you have higher affinity to the heparan sulfate receptor? If you do, we have a problem. Okay, now this is DNA India news. Now, I don't know why I have to recycle each video for some God, I hate these types of videos. I don't like videos where it's just playing music in the background. It's crazy. No way. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see this week. Okay, this is 5 days ago. China's hMPV virus outbreak worsens quademic crisis. That's another thing that dovetails into the concept that I have here. If you get something that's somewhat benign, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to heal. But if you are bombarded by different pathogens in a short amount of time, you never fully heal, and it gets worse and worse to the point where you may get the bronchitis and the pneumonia, and it takes longer to heal. And that's my concern, that because of the RSV, the MPV, the rhinovirus, influenza A, adenoviruses, right? People getting these flu-like illnesses in this season with a weakened immune system from the crisis that we went through, with a weakened immune system with a recent infection, it becomes problematic down the road because it takes longer time to heal. You have you're immune compromised to somewhat, your body's healing, and then all of a sudden you have a circulating H5N1. So this quademic issue is a real issue. Okay, so this is 7 minutes. India, perspective on the hMPV.
A respiratory virus is spreading from China to countries in the region and beyond. It comes at a time when the world is already reeling under 4 other viral infections all at once. So are we on the cusp of a new pandemic? Ragini Sudhir Chore finds out.
China is back in the news. A human metapneumovirus, or hMPV, outbreak in China has raised the alarm worldwide. The virus has spread to India and some countries in Southeast Asia. China calls it winter viral, but hospital videos circulating on social media paint a different picture. Take a look at these videos. Hospitals in China are reported to be struggling with a surge in the hMPV cases alongside influenza A and Mycoplasma pneumonia infections.
All right. First of all, the Indian news, they always have this like worrisome soundtrack. I'll give you 2 lines of thought here. One line of thought is that there's a problem. People are leaking information out of China, and this could be problematic for the rest of the world. Or there is a concerted effort within Western media, on the one hand, to downplay it because to prevent the economics from being affected by it. And on the other hand, to create some sort of international instability with China. So if it's the international instability with China, it feels like a psyop by the agencies. But what I don't understand is that if that's the case, then why is Western media so quiet about it? And it seems as though it's more on an economic point of view instead of towing the line for the agency's psyop. Because normally they do. Normally, through the Smith Modernization Act, the mainstream media tows the agency's trade spycraft, right? All right. So what's really going on? This is why I'm saying that I have this feeling that it's more it's a problem, but it'll die down and it won't be global, and then it'll resurge again. So we're seeing the first wave, but it's a small wave, and then it dies down, and then a few years later it pops back up. I'm really worried about 2028, 2029, mostly 2029 and 2030 in terms of a new surge. Usually when you have a big problem in the world in terms of pathogens, there's a 10-year hit again. And that 10-year hit would be around 2029 or 2030 in the terms of COVID. But my feeling is that hMPV, worldwide pandemic, no. Local issue, yes. And it's not just a fake, some sort of psyop thing. But I don't like the way India news is portraying the story, because it's almost, they're trying to create fear. Now, I'm not about creating fear, right? I am about waking people up to existential threats that have either low probability, high impact, or high probability, high impact.
Videos show overcrowded facilities, drawing comparisons to the COVID-19 pandemic. Schools in Wuhan and other cities in China are closed amid a rise in hMPV infections. The World Health Organization is demanding detailed.
And again, if it's true what Miss Taiwan's saying, that livestock is not trading, well, why? Well, wait a minute. I mean, I don't even, I think she's wrong on that, but she could be right. But why is the report saying that? First of all, we don't hear anything. This is the problem that we have with Asia and China in general. We don't really
Information
see
from
good news.
China. Is this the return of a new pandemic? Wuhan, 12 December 2019. A cluster of patients begin to experience the symptoms of an illness that is later identified as novel coronavirus. By 11th January 2020, China had reported the first death from the novel coronavirus. And on the 23rd, Wuhan, a city of 11 million people, is placed under lockdown. A week later, the World Health Organization declared it a public health emergency of international concern. Cut to January.
And we had doctors, pushing certain inoculations, right? Stating recently that we're going to see another breakout of pathogens in 2025 or 2026. Well, how do they know that if this is just kind of a random kind of situation with a set of probabilities? How do they know for sure it's happening in 2025 or 2026?
hMPV infections spread in China. Worryingly, the hMPV outbreak has been reported at around the same time of the year as COVID-19 5 years ago, causing panic among people. However, hMPV is not the only problem here. This winter has brought.
I'm tired of the music. I can't deal with it. Let's see, Indian news. India. There seems to be a case that happened in India that's elderly. See, all this news is coming out of India. Now, it could be that they're just wanting to get money for pharmaceutical development and production. That could be it. Shame that there's not much. I think there's a problem in China, but I don't think it'll be global. See, this is AP 4 days ago the Associated Press talking about China's rate of hMPV infections in northern provinces of China. Now, why would they have to make a big to-do out of nothing unless there's a problem? The human metapneumovirus is not a new virus, and it has been with humans for at least several decades. Well, we don't know that. I mean, officially it was discovered in 2001. It's assumed that it's going to be in the human population, but it wasn't isolated. It was known to be in the human population in 2001. So it's not a new virus and has been with humans for at least several decades. means. Well, has it or hasn't it? We don't know that for sure.
年的一个时间。那么由于检测手段的这个发展，那么近年来呢，
All right, this is Wang Leping, researcher. Due to the development of detection methods, there have been
关于人偏肺病毒的报道
more
见多。
reported,
那么
more
目前
related reports in recent years. Now, the research paper that talked about the epidemiology of hMPV did discuss that China has been developing cheaper kits to detect. Now, how often they're used in China, I don't know. They have developed detection methods, and with that, they should be seeing more cases, all right, because they're detecting, they have better detection methods. That information that I read in a research paper goes against what Miss Taiwan's saying about them not testing. Now she's saying that they're testing.
那人偏肺病毒的整个
At
的检测
present,
的阳性率
the rate of positive cases in human metapneumovirus detection is fluctuating. Okay, that makes sense. There's that depending on the population and all that. Yeah, that makes sense.
这个上升呢也是处于一个平台波动。那么其中北方省份的阳性率呢出现一个下降。
The positive rate in northern provinces is going down. All right, what about the other provinces?
我们也看到这个14岁以下的这个患者，他的这个
And the
检测阳
positive
阳性率
rate
呢，
and the positive rate among patients age 14 and below has started to decline. Because remember, it's that 14 and younger that are the most vulnerable, especially that first year or 2 years.
开始下降。那么您刚才提到的人偏肺病毒、呼吸道合胞病毒，
Human metapneumovirus and respiratory syncytial virus, so RSV, are both common pathogens. So they're seeing a hit between MPV and RSV, which is what I've been saying for 2 years. I've been saying RSV is also a problem.
是引起冬季这个呼吸道传染病的
That
常见病
causes-
原体。那么
All right, that causes respiratory infections. I'm sorry, that cause respiratory infectious diseases in winter. Well, no kidding. That's what we call the cold. But remember the domino effect. It's not about just the pathogen. It's about how long it takes to heal. It's about the compromised immune systems and other problems that could be either released on purpose or things that are circulating, like highly pathogenic H5N1, that if mutates could go human-to-human transmission.
以后的症状呢主要是体现在那
Their symptoms include fever, cough, runny nose, and nasal congestion once infected. So it's like a common cold.
出现发热、咳嗽、流涕这个鼻塞等这样的一些呼吸道的症状。那么
Most symptoms will disappear by themselves. Now, it's important to mention that let's say there is no real big mutation for hMPV, no lab leak. This is just garden variety hMPV. Why is there a surge of cases? And it goes back to what I've been saying. The 2020 event and the other waves within the crisis of 2020 have weakened people's immune systems in the society. So it's going to be more prevalent to have pathogens that straddle that bronchitis pneumonia clinical manifestation. I know for a fact that people are getting sick in the United States during this cold season. It's less cases than last year when you add everything up. But there are more people straddling that bronchitis pneumonia. And it lingers. In some cases, you get this reinfection or a double hit where you feel like you're okay, and then a week later it comes back.
多数症状呢可自行消失，
But
但
they
是对
can
于儿童、
cause
老
but they can cause lower respiratory tract infections among children. Now remember, very young children don't have a robust immune system, and not only that, their physiology is different. When you're an adult, you have longer tract, pulmonary tract. Your lungs are bigger. So the tubes in your lungs, right? Your bronchioles, you got a longer system, within your lung. When you're younger, it's smaller. All right, so it's much easier to cause problems in the upper and the lower part of the lung compared to an adult. Now, this is part of the reason why the middle age doesn't get RSV as often or MPV as often. The geriatric has a compromised immune system, weakening immune system. The young physiology is smaller, their lungs are smaller, and their immune system isn't robust, especially that first 2 years.
人以及免疫功能比较弱的这样的一些群体，那么它可
The elderly and the people with relatively weak immune function. So, like I said, it's hurting the elderly that are immune compromised and the children.
会引发这个下水道的感染，但这两种病原呢引起这个
However, the rates of serious cases and deaths caused by these two pathogens are very low. So statistically, that's true. I mean, it's like, I don't know, like 1 point something, 1.8 or whatever, 1.4%.
重症和死亡率都是很低的。
But that's looking at pre-COVID data. What happens in a post-COVID era where you have weakening immune systems in the population? Now, people that were born just now, let's say they have a 6-month, they've been born outside of the COVID era. That was post-COVID. If you have a child that's 4 years old, 5 years old, well, they were born during the COVID era, right? If you have a child that's 10 years old that's catching it, the child was born pre-COVID. So, but many of these cases, the children are 8 months old, 3 months old, less than a year, especially in India. Okay, so that's post-COVID era. That's post-COVID crisis. So they wouldn't have they already have an immune system that isn't fully functional yet, but they wouldn't have a suppressed immune system because of the post-COVID era. So this common exposure to hMPV for pediatric, if the cases are roughly the same year over year, it should be not a big problem. Now, the ones that are older, the ones that are adults or geriatric, some of these people have compromised immune systems. So when they get hMPV, it could be worse. So you got different types of patients with a little bit of a different dynamic that's going on. You have the pediatric patients that were born after COVID. Okay, so they don't have a compromised immune system, assuming they didn't get an inoculation. But the thing is that the elderly, they do have a compromised immune system just by being older, and the effects for many of them, and the effects of what they went through in 2020 and the few years after that. So when she states, the fatality rate is low, well, the fatality rate is low from data in a pre-COVID era. It's really not well established what the death rate is in a post-COVID era because we just had a surge. Now, I suspect it's about the same as pre-COVID era, but what about severity? You know, it's not. What about the severity? Did she say severity has changed or just? However, the rates of
这个
serious.
重症
Okay,
和死亡率都是
so she
很低的。
phrases it. She phrases it as, however, the rates of serious cases and deaths caused by these two pathogens are very low. So she's all right. So the severity of the cases she's saying is almost like pre-pandemic levels, pre-COVID pandemic levels. But why do you need to speak to the international community talking about the northern provinces in China if there's no real big issue? So chances are there is a big issue. The question is, how bad? Can we honestly believe everything that the health ministry is saying from China? Probably not. And this is where the problem is the trust isn't there. Okay, this was 9 days ago by the Australian. So let's see what this is.
Happy birthday, Marty. Oh, no, you don't. Let me get this.
Oh, thanks. You're too kind.
I've heard that.
Unlimited 2% cash back. The Wells Fargo Active Cash credit card.
I hate to say this, but it feels like 2020 all over again.
Bustling hospitals, mysterious illnesses, and
This
crowded waiting
was
rooms in
this was
China.
reported this was published 9 days ago.
Flooding social media feeds with a side all too familiar. The spread of a new virus is festering through the world's second most populous country, with northern China in particular recording a rise in cases during the winter months. So what is hMPV and how much should we worry?
According to the CDC, cases of human metapneumovirus, or hMPV, spiked 36% higher than average this season.
It's not entirely unfamiliar to Australia.
So there's a spike this season. But supposedly there's no problem. Why is there a spike? Did something mutate? Or
hMPV
standard
is
mutations that don't give any, real change in dynamics of infection, but because we have a weakened immune systems from a post-COVID era, this is manifesting itself.
respiratory illness that causes cold or flu-like symptoms. First reported in 2001, the virus can spark such symptoms as coughing, a blocked and runny nose with congestion, and shortness of breath, much like a common cold. But the severity varies among young children, the elderly, and the immunocompromised, and can lead to harsher conditions like pneumonia or bronchitis. Neighboring countries to China said they were monitoring the spread of the respiratory virus, but played down the initial causes for alarm. With an incubation period of 3 to 6 days, hMPV can spread through coughing and sneezing, close personal contact, and touching objects that have the virus, according to the CDC. The key question is hMPV similar to COVID?
It was first discovered by scientists back in 2001, but has probably been around with us for decades, if not centuries. What's really happened is our testing has changed.
Experts are quelling fears that this might lead to a new pandemic, suggesting the situation was not yet comparable to the COVID-19 outbreak. Health Minister Mark Butler told reporters on Sunday the government was watching the situation in China, and he had asked his department to keep him up to date on any developments. The illness is quite common in Australia, with figures showing it was the 5th most common respiratory illness to be contracted in 2024. With no vaccine to stop hMPV, prevention includes following basic hygiene. There is currently no evidence that the outbreak is out of the ordinary or that a new respiratory virus or illness has emerged in China.
All right, so do we know what's going on? No, we don't, because China isn't being truthful about anything. See, a lot of concern about 7 days ago. But when you take a look at anything for today, or it's in Indian language, or it has all the doom and gloom soundtrack. So there's just not that much out there. There's just not much out there to know. All right, let's pivot to H5N1. Okay, first U.S. bird flu death. Well, this is the Louisiana case. This is 19 hours ago. Why are they doing this?
With reports of the first human death from bird flu here in the U.S., some folks might be feeling a little uneasy and wondering if this could lead to another pandemic. We spoke to an expert at the University of Washington School of Medicine about what you need to know. Dr. Alex Graninger joins us now in ArcSeattle. He's a professor in laboratory medicine and pathology at UW Medicine. Doctor, thanks so much for being here. Let's talk about this bird flu that's making news. It's a virus called H5N1.
I don't know what he's going to say. We're doing this on the fly here. I'm willing to bet he'll say, don't worry about it. He'll say nothing about the domino effect from COVID. And he'll say nothing about weakened immune systems. And he probably won't say anything about that it's a low probability at this moment in time, but a very high probability in 2025, late 2025 or into 2026. Because it seems to me that H5N1 is tracking to the alpha-2 6 receptor. Let's see what he says.
Tell us more about it and if it's something that we should actually be concerned about.
Sure. So H5N1 has been around for almost 25 years now, starting in Southeast Asia. Various H5N1s have been spreading around. This particular strain entered the U.S. just a couple of years ago, found its way into avian species or throughout North America, and as well as into our dairy cows. And it's had about almost 70 cases now. I think there was just one that hasn't technically been confirmed by the CDC in San Francisco in the last couple of days. I think there's maybe 67. We did also have the first death, unfortunately, about a week ago in Louisiana, thought to be in contact with a backyard flock. So it's a developing situation. It's very challenging to know exactly how to message risk on this, to be honest. The last influenza pandemic that happened in 2009, everyone expected it to be H5N1 at that time. People have been talking about H5N1 as being the next big thing, like I said, for over 25 years. And it really hasn't been the next big thing. And so there's a lot of work that's going into understand that. It's certainly problematic that it's in our milk. It's affected egg prices. There's a lot we can talk about. But I just want to be clear that it's challenging to know how to message the risk. I think certainly like pasteurizing milk's a good thing. Cooking your chicken's a good thing. Sort of avoiding contact with birds because there's so many birds that are infected. We're talking about hundreds of millions of birds that have been infected by.
First of all, why would you be eating raw chicken?
Just in North America. So anyway, lots of things to talk about.
So who's most at risk for bird flu? What are the symptoms? And how can someone get tested if they think they have it?
Right. So there have been two sort of major ways that bird flu has caused symptoms. The first is in our people who are have contact with dairy cattle. That's mostly been through infected udders and milk that gets squirted into people's eyes, and that causes conjunctivitis. And that's been relatively mild. And then, and sort of self-limited. There's been a little bit sort of like, kind of, I don't say like respiratory symptoms, but sort of like just sort of the malaise associated with an influenza, but otherwise quite mild. There have been a couple of cases directly from birds that have infected individuals, or even cases we don't know where somehow someone got infected. Those that get into the respiratory tract, the lower respiratory tract, someone's a little bit immunocompromised, that can be a much more severe case, as the case in Louisiana showed. There's also a case in British Columbia as well that was went to the intensive care unit, and that individual was able to fight off the infection. So most of the time it's probably just going to look like an influenza. And the good news is that diagnostics that detect influenza can detect H5N1.
Like I said, the reason why H5N1 isn't problematic at the moment is because you need multiple hits for mutation, but it's tracking towards those mutations. And when you have a society that is somewhat weakened by other pathogens, and you have a circulating situation with H5N1 with the animals and with humans during the summer months in the United States, guess what? You're going to have additional mutations that track. Now, because of the Louisiana case showed low frequency but higher affinity to the alpha-2/6 receptor, that's a danger. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be right now, but it's moving in that direction. Now, the question is nature robust enough to keep it at bay? Or will it actually take hold to human transmission with high fidelity? We don't know. We don't know. But it looks like it's moving in that direction. So it's like a slow moving train crash.
This can't tell you that it's H5N1. They're going to say that it's flu A. So just getting sort of normal testing should be able to detect this virus. And we think it'll be mostly like other influenzas, with the exception of if you are getting dairy milk squirt into your eye. That's a different sort of tropism of infection.
So in terms of those recent cases, when humans have become infected with the bird flu, it's typically been through contact with infected animals.
Garbage reporting. Now even the David Pakman show's talking about H5N1. You know it's dangerous when David Pakman's talking. Amazing. All right. Egg shortage. This is a problem.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Are you having a hard time finding eggs? Even Costco didn't have one when I was there the other day. Anyway, so you're not alone.
Yeah, Lita Lee tells us what's behind this nationwide egg shortage.
Avian influenza has killed millions of egg-laying hens across the nation, and more are dying.
Of the 340 million layers that the U.S. requires to feed the U.S., there's less than 300 million left, with millions more dying every week. It's not like you could just start producing eggs right away. I mean, to repopulate a barn and get them back into production, it takes about a year. So this will be kind of an ongoing thing.
Local egg farms like Wailua Fresh Eggs produces about 300,000 eggs per day, but they say it's still not enough to meet the demands among residents, hotels, restaurants, bakeries, and grocery stores.
Everyone is fighting for eggs right now, so we may not get eggs for a couple shipments, but that's why we try to order more.
Prices of eggs have surged due to high demand.
The prices are just outrageous, sky high. The prices have increased anywhere from 200 to 300%. That's been the worst. We've had it in the past, a few years back, but not as bad as this one.
That's a lot because we go through about 300 to 500 eggs per day, 800 and more on the weekend.
Business is hoping the shortage won't last long, while local egg farms have taken precautions to keep their own birds healthy.
It'll probably take about 4 to 6 months before they can start replenishing the egg demand again.
We've bolstered our biosecurity, no visitors to the farm, shower in, shower out, Sterilex. We're spraying tires, doing everything we can to keep it off of our farm.
Wholesalers like Diotani say their pallets have been empty of mainland eggs for the past couple of weeks. Usually their warehouses carry around 500 cases of both mainland and local eggs, but with the shortage, there's less than half. Alina Lee, KHON2 News, working for Hawaii.
But Alina, thank you.
All right, well, there's egg shortage. All right. Nothing big in the news with H5N1 right now. We still have 67 cases. Most of those cases are California dairy. So that's my overview of hMPV and H5N1. Is it a problem right at this moment? Do you have to like worry at red alert? No. But I'm concerned about the tracking of H5N1 to the alpha-2/6 receptor. And it does seem to be happening with the D1.1 variant. And that the circulation in the summer and into the fall will probably have mutations that increase this tracking to alpha-2/6 receptor. So that's the problem. Those are the concerns I have for H5N1. Now, the concerns that I have with hMPV, there's a lot of unknown out of China. There seems to be worry in India. There are cases increasing in India. There are cases that increased in Malaysia compared to year over year. So what's going on? And, you know, but here we're moving into the realm of we can't even trust social media anymore as a data point because there's so much disinformation that's being put out there. Now, I've been trying really, really hard to just play the middle ground and just, you know, state how I feel. Now, with that said, there's a lot that's unknown with hMPV, but I'm concerned about the increased cases in Malaysia, in India, and supposedly in China, where normally the spike doesn't take place until March, April, May, not December, January, February. So what's going on? You know, was there a mutation? We don't know. Where's the sequencing? What's going on? And then you have the Marburg issue, and you know, are there differences in the Tanzania variant versus the Rwanda variant versus the Angola variant? I don't know. I had to look into that. So the next couple videos I'm probably going to be, if I get some time, I'll probably be going into the molecular biology, the genomics, the virology of Marburg. Again, Marburg isn't something to worry that there's a huge world pandemic. No. Should you worry if you're in the Congo? Should you worry if you're in Tanzania or, you know, Angola? Yeah. But worldwide, no. Mpox, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another surge of that around the world. I'm a little surprised that Western countries like in Europe haven't had more cases of the clade 1B. So that's my take on it right now. You can still enjoy your life. Don't live in panic, but just live in being abreast on the information. All right. H5N1 is tracking slowly to alpha-2/6 receptor. That's a problem. If you have high fidelity, high affinity, you got a problem with H5N1. Respiratory infections are problematic. They mutate and they spread across society much easier than pox viruses. Pox is an issue because of the lack of cross-reactivity if it takes hold in the society. And Marburg, I'm not worried about Marburg. All right. But I think it's interesting to understand what's mutating because Marburg was part of a weapons program. Right. That was developed, that was enhanced. What's going on there? So just stay vigilant. Help support my work by sharing the links, by making sure you subscribe to the 2 channels on X. I have GETTR as a channel. Subscribe there. Make sure you subscribe to the 4 channels on YouTube that I have. Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Ask your followers, your social media, your friends to follow me. You can listen to live broadcasts on my website or on YouTube and Rumble, and listen to recorded podcasts in audio format on my website, Podomatic, and Apple Podcast. Please help support my work by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee, or be a paid member to my Patreon channel, and that helps support the work I do. Better yet, take a look at the products that I have on my website and follow my lead. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.